In racing games, precision is everything. You spend hours perfecting your line, fine-tuning your setup, perfecting driving mechanics, and chasing milliseconds, literal thousandths of a second, whilst on the limit of your and your car's ability. All for just one clean run, a top ranking time, or just to learn and push your own skills and abilities. But what happens when those rules don't apply to everyone? What happens if someone was to shortcut the process entirely? There's never been a form of competition that didn't have cheating, especially in the gaming world and the racing world. You can look at other games like Forza, iRacing, Trackmania, Gran Turismo, Need for Speed, even in real life, all the way up to the very pinnacle of motorsports in Formula One. They all have cheating, and CarX Street, unfortunately, is not an exception to this rule. CarX Street's been no stranger to players with suspicious gameplay, impossible times, strange behaviors, impossible power numbers, leaderboard runs, and ghosts that just completely defy the physics of the game. A lot of these are pretty easy to spot. There's a lot of cheats that are way less blatant, and even the very top players have been exploiting them, and we've been giving them the benefit of the doubt this entire time. We've got more people playing the game than ever before since the console release happened, more people complaining about cheating than ever before, and with all these eyes on it, there's more and more evidence coming out, and it's become very, very clear that people are cheating, and they've been doing it for a lot longer than most of us realized. In a game that doesn't advertise itself as competitive or an esports title, it's easy to overlook cheating as just another nuisance or something that doesn't really matter. But it does. It affects trust, it affects motivation, and it affects the competitive integrity of a game that at its core is built on skill, knowledge, practice, creativity, mechanics, community, and just a general passion for racing games and the integrity of these games. And this video isn't about pointing fingers or stirring up hate, because I'm not here to start drama. But even a lot of my longer term viewers and even new viewers have probably seen my negative Steam review of this game, which I made when the anti-cheat update hit, which ever since that update came out has been a huge point of controversy within the community of CarX Street. So I'm here to lay out what's actually been happening, how these exploits and cheats work, and why the easy anti-cheat system has failed, and what that's going to mean for this community moving forward. Now I'm going to name specific tools, people, examples, not to target anyone specifically, but because this problem really needs to be acknowledged by name and not hidden behind vague warnings and grey areas like it has been so far. This game is mostly moderated by the community, as the development team behind it is really quite small. They've got a very limited studio that's split between a lot of different titles, so they don't have a lot of resources to commit to this. So if these issues aren't talked about, they simply just will not be fixed. And just to be clear, don't harass or contact anyone I mention in this video. That's not what it's about. This is about building awareness, giving transparency, and hopefully getting the attention of the people who can actually make a change with this. So let's get into it. Before we get any deeper into this video, let's define what we are really talking about here. So what is cheating in CarX Street? Firstly, obviously modding and cheating aren't the same thing, and the developers have been very openly supportive of modding. If you're changing the way the cars look, the way the game sounds, or adding aesthetics to the user experience and the UI of the game, things that don't affect the gameplay, obviously not cheating. That's just the community being creative. And the modding community is really what keeps these games alive and extends the longevity of the player base, as you've seen in other CarX titles. Secondly, not all mods or cheats are malicious. Even though technically speaking, modded cars and modded currencies do go against the terms of service of the game and the end user license agreement that you accept when you purchase and download it. Now, if you're just using a modified car with weird values to drift or cruise or race in just free roam lobbies and you're just hanging out with your mates, that's obviously not cheating. You're just having a good time, right? You're not gaining any advantage over anyone. And then again, if you've modded in money or experience so that you can unlock everything and build out the garage that you want or the cars that you want, again, That's not really cheating. You know, not everyone wants to spend hours and hours and hours grinding on elite races. That's fair enough. You know, there is an argument to be made that having all this extra currency that you don't have to earn gives you an advantage in time attacks. That's honestly a stretch to me. Having multiple cars for the time attacks doesn't really give you an advantage, because there's like 1 or 2 cars that are the best cars bar none. So if people are using money to build all these other cars out, they're not actually gaining advantage and cheating on these time attacks. You know, there's people using the 1 meta car and then they never have to earn any money ever again, right? So that's a stupid argument. It doesn't hurt anyone. It's not giving you any advantage, and you're not taking any advantages away from other people, right? And that's where the line starts to get crossed. So cheating becomes a problem where it gives you an advantage where it really actually matters. So if you have advantages in races, like for money and pink slips, for example, like these street net races with people who have unlimited nitrous or crazy fast cars, or they can alter the game speed. You know, on leaderboards, right? They have the best rewards in the game at endgame. You know, and people are cheating to get these rewards, or, you know, even just trying to get their name on the top of the leaderboard where everyone wants to be. And then beyond that, there's some cases, you know, people are getting clout, for lack of a better word. And, you know, by being so fast in the game, they're making themselves an authority figure in the community because they're so fast, when in actuality, it's very deceptive because they're using cheats. You know, these are scenarios where it's not a harmless action anymore. It starts to affect everyone else who plays the game negatively. You know, so what specifically are people doing that would count as cheating, right? So the general consensus is that cheating is where you gain an advantage that is not otherwise available in the game. You know, and I'm going to go in depth into a couple of those methods in this video, but just briefly, Steam controller macros or Steam controller inputs. People are using them to automate clutch and gear shifts, infinite nitrous and infinite fuel and things like that through memory injection and cheat menus like the game speed alterations and stuff like that. Modded cars with crazy values. You've seen the 50,000 horsepower cars on the leaderboards. They're obvious and easy to spot, but people also have modified downforce values to make their cars turn like Formula 1 cars, you know. They have reduced air resistance, so they have ridiculous straight line speed. You know, things like that. These are things that no normal player can do unless they have the help of a third-party program or software, or they're traded to them from a cheater themselves who has used third-party softwares. These things break the balance of the game, and they break the trust of the community, because, you know, at what stage is there even any point of playing the game anymore and competing in these things when the leaderboards and the racing is just filled with blatant cheaters? You know, and to be fair, not every exploit or cheat is cheating, right? There are things that are exploitative that can be done within the systems of the game. So like the weight reduction glitch, for example. This is something that's easy to replicate as long as you have the knowledge that it exists, but it's generally accepted by the community as something that is okay because it's so easy to replicate. It's so easy that you've probably done it by accident, which is how it was discovered in the first place. Not cheating. The tractor builds. Whilst they are generally frowned upon, and the devs have also said that they don't want them in the game, and they're so grippy and so fast, it's not cheating because it's just min-maxing. It's chasing the meta. It's, in a weird way, actually shows the extent of game knowledge that some people have and how knowledgeable they are and what tuning is the best in the game. It's not punishable and it's not cheating. So like the difference really is, are you using what the game gives you or not? Are you circumnavigating mechanics of the game? You know, if you have to use anything that is an outside tool that's not within the game and you're bypassing the limits of the game, that's cheating. And this includes Steam, by the way. This is a very important distinction we have to make very early on. Steam is not CarX Street. It's a third-party program. If you're using macros through Steam input, that is cheating. But the problem right now is that heaps of players, especially even top players on the leaderboards, are doing some of these cheating methods, and nobody and nothing is stopping them right now. Not even the anti-cheat. One of the oldest ways to cheat in this game is using the infinite nitrous mod menu cheat engine cheat. Now, if you've been around since the early versions of the game on PC, you definitely have seen people using this one. You know, you get cars that are just boosting non-stop down all the straights, and they just don't have to worry about regenerating or snow cooldown, just endlessly accelerating, and it makes no sense. Yeah, that was always unlimited nitrous, and it was very, very apparent on time attacks and stuff. You know, it was everywhere. You see all kinds of people showing up on leaderboards that you'd never see before. One that was always terrible was the Lamborghini Diablo highway race, the one where everyone has the same Diablo and it's up the bridge. It was just destroyed by Wiimote, and you know, people using the cheat engine or these Wiimote programs to basically freeze their nitrous bar so it never ever went down. They could just hold the NOS button for the entire event. You know, and back then even some top players were using it, and even not that long ago, even back to times when After the Sunset Speedway was released, you know. I can think back like 2-3 months ago, Aizen, who was a top player in this game, published a video investigating the cheating issues in this game, particularly around unlimited nitrous and the clutch exploit people were doing. And his video clearly shows there's a Russian player named Safko or Feel, I think are the two names he goes by, but he admitted himself to setting time attack times using unlimited nitrous. So like, and this guy is still competing on time attacks, and he's ranking at the top, by the way. He's never been punished, you know, and he's been using unlimited nitrous and clutch exploits, which I'm going to go into later.
We'll show him admitting the use of infinite nitro on this run.
Man, I run 625 on Unlim Nitra.
But these days, luckily the anti-cheat blocks most versions of this cheat and most renditions, so it's not really common, but you know, if we're going to be honest, it's definitely not gone. Anyone who has any kind of know-how can bypass easy anti-cheat and then just run Wiimote or cheat engine just like they always would and get the same effect. You know, in any event where, you know, nitrous is the difference between winning and losing, like pink slips and leaderboards, which is basically every single race, this is still a very serious issue, and the anti-cheat doesn't actually fix it because it's so easy to bypass, and then nothing's being manually checked on the developers end. There's no moderators in the game. Yeah, this has always been one of the most prominent forms of cheating in this game. You know, the anti-cheat doesn't solve the problem. For example, after 30 seconds of Googling and YouTubing, I found a video of someone teaching people how to bypass the anti-cheat and be able to just use Wiimote again. Get the unlimited. So anyone can do this. Anyone can do it. You just download a file and run it. It's super easy, and you can't achieve anything like this in the game. And then most players wouldn't even know that it's happening unless you're at like a very, very high level, because the ghosts on the time attacker leaderboards don't show the nitrous. So luckily it's mostly gone. But the fact that it's so easy to find ways to get around it and still accomplish the same thing shows that it's a real issue still, and the anti-cheat's not doing its job. Now let's talk about the modded cars. This is where the real issue starts to show its ugly head. If you've spent any time in time attack events, online racing, pink slip racing, even free roam racing and drifting, you've probably seen some people with some pretty broken cars. And the ones that are really obvious and really bad are the ones that you see them on the leaderboards and stuff, and in races with 50,000, 60,000 horsepower. They hit ridiculous speeds and they post completely bullshit times in these events. You know, it's honestly so ridiculous that it's laughable. Like, it's such an obvious cheater. And the fact that they often go unpunished and remain on the leaderboards is crazy. It's laughable, honestly. But that's not even the bad one. The real problem is these builds with 50,000 plus horsepower aren't even the ones we need to be worried about. For the most part, they're being used by people who suck at the game anyway, and you can probably beat them if you're half decent, right? But there are significantly more subtle and quiet versions of these modified cars that are still floating around, and they're way, way harder to spot. You know, these are cars that look normal for the most part, until you see their ghosts in an event or you see them racing. They've got huge performance advantages. For example, people have increased downforce well beyond what you can get in the tuning menu. So they just turn like crazy. They have so much grip. They have reduced air resistance, especially in low class cars, so that you've seen these videos of C1, C2 cars going like 500, 600 kilometers an hour. They've probably got no air resistance, no drag, you know? Another one, lowered transmission loss. So the effective horsepower of the car is way higher than what the statistics say. You know, you can't see it on the leaderboard. So a car that has negative 100% transmission loss, if that's a 300 horsepower car, the effective horsepower is now being boosted by the negative transmission loss. It's like 600 horsepower now, it doubles it, right? These cars all look completely legit on the leaderboard, on the stats screen, in the tuning shop. Unless you actually look at the tuning values in the settings, you would never know, right? So even if you look at the leaderboards, these cars don't stand out. You know, the tools to make these cars, to be fair, they're no longer widely available, and the game files aren't editable anymore to do these kinds of things, at least not without a bit of effort. So the anti-cheat, to be fair, did slow it down and made it way harder to create the new modded cars now. But if you've got a car made before the anti-cheat update, it never got removed. You know, so if you made one of these cars back when it was easy to do so, you've still got it, you can still raise it, and you can still trade it or sell it. Even I still have cars that are modded like this, right? I've got cars with increased angle, or they're swapped onto different chassis or suspensions from other cars because, you know, we never used to have prototype parts. And even then, beyond that, the steering angle was even more limited on some cars. So we had modded cars going around so that all cars could drift, like the ones that you really couldn't drift. You know, we modded those so they could. You know, and because of that, we've now got a circulating market of modded cars that are being passed around like they're collectibles, you know, and they're even being sold for real money. You know, this especially hits the console player base hard, who, one, they're all new to the game. They never even knew this stuff existed, and they're never going to have access to even be able to make them, right? So people are selling these cars to console players, you know, for like $5-10 a car. You see them asking for them. It's crazy. And then to make it even worse, the tools that get used to create these cars, if you go back onto an older version of the game, even on the latest version, you can just run a bypass like the one I showed earlier, and they still work, right? So there's super easy ways to get around it and still make these stupid cars. Like, and let's be honest, if someone's smart enough to be able to edit the game files or to make a mod menu that lets them make these cars, they're definitely going to be smart enough to bypass the anti-cheat, because I showed you, it took me 30 seconds to find a video on how to get around it, you know, and that is essentially making anti-cheat in its current state completely useless, which is the complaint that the PC community has been having ever since it got implemented. It's not the fact that it stops people from cheating, or we're all cheaters and we hate that it's there. It's the fact that it doesn't stop the people who are doing the real malicious cheating at all. They can all just get around it like it's not even there. But, you know, legitimate players who are just either have mods to have fun, or they have like they just want to use something like reshade, which now gets completely blocked. We're punished, but all these cheaters are still running rampant. It's horrible. Now here's where things start to get really frustrating for someone who competes on the leaderboards at a high level. You know, it's not the fact that cheating exists on its own, but it's because some of the best players in the game are actively using these cheats. You know, in past videos, I've talked about how top players gain huge time advantages in time attacks by using meta builds like the tractor tire setups, and I disagree with them, and the developers disagree with them as well, but that's fine. You know, and that alone gives you maybe like a 1 to 2 second advantage over someone who's not using it, and that advantage increases in higher classes. But recently, we've actually uncovered that a lot of players are doing a lot more than just using these tunes. You know, a lot of these top players are also using a macro that they've set up within the Steam controller settings. You know, it's a third-party input script that actually automatically does the manual shifting with clutch. You know, basically it allows you to run the car in manual mode, so the one where you have to press the clutch to change gears without ever actually having to press the clutch. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the really fast shift times that you can achieve by using the manual clutch, but without any of the mechanical difficulty of actually executing the combo whilst driving at a high level. And it might sound like something that's relatively harmless, and so why is that a problem? You know, it really does give a huge competitive advantage in quite a lot of ways. You know, you get a perfect gear shift, the shortest possible time shifting gears every single time with no delay, no mess ups, right? You know, they've posted a video, the people who use these cheats, which I'm going to go into in a second, they've posted a video where they've done the testing and they've proven that it roughly is 30 milliseconds faster than you can do with human inputs. But that actually doesn't account for any human error at all. That's the best possible circumstance. So I've done testing myself, and when factoring in human error, because you're not going to get the fastest possible human input every single time, it's closer to almost double that. It's like 50 to 60 milliseconds per shift for every shift over the course of like a minute to a minute and a half long time attack. So you can see how that adds up pretty quickly. You know, then there's that, you no longer have to time the button combinations whilst you're in the middle of corners or when you're trying to press a bunch of other buttons. You know, you're freeing up your inputs and freeing up brain power to not have to focus on doing that, right? And it is hard. It's hard. There's a reason that people don't like using the clutch option. You know, you spend less time overall with the clutch pressed in, especially whilst braking, right? So you get better braking zones, you get more engine braking, smoother engine braking. The instant shifting is also good for smoother launches. You get less drivetrain shock, like when you press the clutch in and the car revs up, the wheels spin. So that means you launch faster, and when you have to change gears whilst you're turning, you get more grip. You know, all of this adds up. So it's not just a slight change like these people will lead you to believe. Like they've said that it doesn't give an advantage, but why are they using it? It's a game-breaking advantage. It completely ruins the balance, and it literally gains multiple seconds over the course of a minute-long track just in the gear shift time alone, let alone all these other advantages that it gives. You know, the worst part about it is it's not like fringe behavior. It's not just a small problem that's happening with a small subset of people that you wouldn't notice otherwise. It's happening at the very, very top of the leaderboards, the people who win every single event. You know, players like Digerex, Magnum, Step, Sasse, Safco, and heaps more people. Like these are the ones you would recognize these names. They're at the top of the leaderboards. They're all confirmed and admitted themselves that they use these macros. You know, and it gets even more ridiculous, right? A few months ago, I've mentioned this video already. Aizen, he posted a video, and he made this video with the help of Step, and they exposed another group of people, which is the group that is Safco and Sasse and all these Russian players who were using a bug which had the clutch held in about halfway, but still gave the car full speed. Which does the same thing as the macro, it lets gears shift instantly. So they made this video exposing this group. They didn't get punished. So then, you know, a month or so after that, not long after, Step actually has a public video uploaded on his YouTube with a tutorial showing people how to use Steam to set up the macro to cheat the same way as this other group did. I would have considered myself friends with these people, you know, but there's not that many people who are really good at this game, so I know them. You know, so I've confronted them. You know, I came out to them and said, hey guys, you are cheating, and we got into huge arguments about it, and their main defense is that it's quality of life. They do it for quality of life. And to be honest with you, that's laughable to me. There is a setting in the options that let you have an automatic clutch, so you can change gears without having to press the clutch yourself. But the big difference is when you turn it on, the game deliberately slows down your shift times because it's super easy to drive like that. You know, if you have a T50S gearbox with a prototype clutch installed, the shift time that the game sets is 110 milliseconds. are way slower than you'd get to use if you use the macro, right? Way slower. So if it's for quality of life though, if they don't care about the speed advantage, or it doesn't give a speed advantage, why are these players not using the option that's available within the settings of the game? And instead they're going around, they're skipping the penalty, they're manually toggling on these macros. They don't have the speed penalty, they don't have the gear shift penalty, they skip the input altogether, but they still get all the advantages of using it. And recently actually, the developers have held a community meeting and this topic actually came up. Nitrous and E8 actually brought this topic up because it's been a huge talking point in the community for this game for like the last few weeks. The developers have confirmed that using something like Steam to create macros to do these things is considered cheating.
I just have to say that like this. Unofficially, right, the company is against having macros being used in their game. Because it does remove certain aspects and makes it easier for the player. That is an unofficial, I say that as an unofficial statement because it's not been officially kind of, you know, put out there by the company themselves. You know, this is like in our server, even though pretty much everyone is part of this server that's in the community of CarX Street. So, you know, but still it's an unofficial kind of thing. However, at this point in time, they're not going to be banning anybody for it because they honestly just don't know how to deal with it.
They said it's an unofficial statement and they're not banning players right now, but they're working on a way to block it or detect it. And the real problem is here, anti-cheat isn't set up to detect the macros. This is easy anti-cheat, by the way, this game uses. This is the same anti-cheat that runs on something like Fortnite, PUBG, you know, all these huge games. It definitely has macro detection capabilities, but it doesn't flag these macro inputs for some reason. So, you know, again, it's just showing that this anti-cheat is not doing what it should be doing. It is the implementation of this anti-cheat update has been completely useless and it's not stopping anything, even at the very, very high level, which, to be honest with you, if there was just moderators in the game checking inputs, checking time attack times, just one person maybe once every few days got in, it would do a way better job than this anti-cheat's been doing ever since it got added. You know, it's a huge issue, it's a widespread, and it's not just like harming the competitive scene. Like, I get it, like who cares, like maybe it's only noticeable in the top 10, but like if these leaderboards don't have competitive integrity and they aren't enforced to stop things like that, then what's the point in doing them at all? Like you could just go and do 2 runs, set a time that's going to get you the rewards and never do it again, right? Like if these things aren't in place to stop these cheats, then there's no point in competing in these events at all. So it's really, really disappointing that this anti-cheat has been so bad and it's not stopping this. And this is why the PC community has been so loud and against this update that they've implemented. Now, before I wrap up, I just want to be very clear about something. This video isn't about targeting individuals with hate or spite. It's really about pointing out that the system is failing the people it's supposed to protect. Because the truth is, CarX's anti-cheat doesn't stop the cheaters. It doesn't catch the people using macros or modded cars or exploits to win events and just crush every single leaderboard. You know, those players are walking free and they're still playing the game without any punishment. You know, if this system can't catch even the people on the top 1% of the leaderboards who have their name displayed every single day, how can we expect it to protect the rest of the player base? The whole system's backwards right now. The players who are maliciously cheating to win the events go untouched, whilst the casual community who are just trying to enjoy the game their own way using mods are just being blocked from simple tools like reshade, for example. It's so backwards. You know, this is about transparency. It's about pushing for fair play and pushing for competitive integrity, not just for casuals, but for everyone who genuinely loves the game and wants to see it thrive, because it is a great game at its core. And it does offer something that we've been missing in the racing genre for a long time. So, you know, if you're watching this and you're a developer or a community manager, or even just a fan of this series and this game, You know, I hope you take this not as criticism, but like it's really a call to action. You know, this game deserves better. The people who play it deserve better, and it's about time that the tools implemented into the game actually start working to stop the things they're designed to stop. And look, I'm well aware that not everyone's going to agree with everything I have to say in this video, but I know a lot of people do, and you know, a lot of people want to see this fair play. But if you've got anything to add at all, drop it down in the comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment as well, share it around, do all the things that are going to help the algorithm pick up this, because it really is something that should be more well known and talked about enough that something is done about it. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.